For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to Strat News Global. The Indo-Pacific and concerns over China's assertive behavior, increasingly so, in the region, especially against Taiwan, continues to remain in focus at the Shangri-La Dialogue organized by the International Institute of Strategic Studies in Singapore. I am in Singapore, in fact, speaking to you from there. And that's the subject I'm going to speak about in this week's Simply Nitin. I'm Nitin Gokhale. The Indo-Pacific continues to be in the focus as far as the concerns of leading global players like the United States and regional players in the region of Southeast Asia and the wider Indo-Pacific is concerned. In Singapore, there is this big conference, the 20th Asia Security Summit, organized by the International Institute of Strategic Studies, or IISS, a London-based think tank, which organizes this dialogue annually at the Shangri-La Hotel in Singapore. The common thread of discussion and debate has been what is the effect of the Ukraine war on the wider security implications in Indo-Pacific, and does it alter in any way Chinese thinking on what's going to happen in Taiwan? There is also a discussion around what role the United States continues to play in the region and what should be the concern on security and related matters in the coming decade. This dialogue, of course, is mainly centered around the defense ministers of different countries, and defense delegations of all the major players are in attendance in full force. The United States, of course, sends the largest delegation. China is not far behind. Although India does not have too much of official representation, there are people from the private sector, media people like me or analysts like me, and some think tank representatives who are present at the Shangri-La Dialogue, which is an important annual discussion forum for the larger Indo-Pacific arena, which has now become the center of gravity as far as global international concerns and politics is concerned. So what are the takeaways from the summit, which began on 2nd of June with a keynote address by Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, who was speaking at the inaugural session or the opening session, followed by Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and even the Chinese Defense Minister Li Shangfu, which gives an idea of the thinking of these countries who have big stakes and big concerns as far as this region is concerned. So let's begin with what Anthony Albanese said as far as the region is concerned. And the big takeaway for me from the Australian Prime Minister's address, half an hour address yesterday, and followed by some questions, was that he believes that any confrontation between the United States and China will be devastating, not just for the region, but for the world. And therefore, both countries need to address the concerns of the global community as well as start talking to each other and not close the avenues for discussion or engagement. That's exactly what he wanted to say. And in fact, he did say that any breakdown in the relations between the United States and China would have a devastating effect as far as the world is concerned. And I quote the Australian Prime Minister, "If you don't have the pressure valve of dialogue, then there is always a much greater risk of assumptions spilling over into irretrievable action and reaction," unquote. He was speaking to a packed ballroom of defense officials and diplomats from around the world. I quote again, "The consequences of such a breakdown, whether in the Taiwan Strait or elsewhere, would not be confined to the big powers or the site of their conflict. They would be devastating for the world," unquote. Clearly, everybody is worried that China has a design on Taiwan and China might attack Taiwan anytime soon, maybe in the time frame of 2 to 3 years from now, or at least coerce Taiwan so much that conflict then becomes inevitable, where bigger powers then step in. In fact, at the backdrop of what exactly happened as far as the Ukraine conflict is concerned, continues to exercise the minds of defense officials, analysts, and even the IISS. In fact, it came up with a report, annual report, which is called Asia Pacific Regional Security Assessment, which was released by IISS, which is written by the experts of IISS. And the main finding that these people had was that China remains the leading long-term challenge to the existing international order, and that the Russian faltering invasion of Ukraine doesn't have any impact on China's thinking around the time scale or methodology it might use against Taiwan in any potential attack that it plans in the time frame of, as I said, 3 to 4 years. And therefore, the parallels that people draw from the faltering Russian invasion of Ukraine, or the Russian setbacks that the Russian forces suffer in Ukraine on a daily basis, may not have any bearing on how China plans to attack Taiwan or reunify Taiwan, as is its stated aim. So one of the main findings of the IISS assessment is that there is no evidence that war in Ukraine has altered Chinese thinking on the timescale or methodology for a possible attack on Taiwan in the time frame that I mentioned. And I quote partly from the report. It says, Beijing's view of Taiwan as an internal challenge for reunification has shaped its assessment that a Chinese use of force to regain the island would be utterly dissimilar to the Ukraine war, unquote. The Chinese continue to have designs on Taiwan, is what they feel. And the report says, and I quote again, impossible to determine whether China will use force to take Taiwan at some point in the future. The IISS experts feel that decision-making would be shaped not just by an assessment of military capability, but also by a consideration of likely US and allied non-military reactions, including potential economic impacts, like sanctions. Like the Russians have been sanctioned by the West, will China also face sanctions if it takes action against Taiwan or moves against Taiwan? There is no evidence that China has fixed a timetable for invading Taiwan, the report actually finally concluded. But that notwithstanding, I think what Albanese said is more important than what other assessments are, because the breakdown in communication between China and the US, two consequential big powers at the moment, is not something which is healthy for international order, is what the broad assessment and conclusion is there in this hall or in this room when I meet different people. And the assessment is that both countries must start talking. So in that case, the speech or the talk delivered by Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin is important. And I want to bring to you some of the elements that formed part of his 35-minute speech and later interaction. So continuing with the theme that communication is essential, what Secretary Austin said was this, and I quote, "Open lines of communication with the People's Republic of China are essential, especially between our defense and military leaders. For responsible defense leaders, the right time to talk is any time. The right time to talk is every time. And the right time to talk is now," unquote. So he was very clear, the Secretary of Defense of the United States, that communication channels must remain open between the two big powers. And without that, there could be a potential danger in misunderstanding and misassumptions, as even Australian Prime Minister said. So continuing in the same vein, the Secretary of Defense said this, and I quote, "Dialogue is not a reward, it is a necessity. And the more that we talk, the more that we can avoid the misunderstandings and miscalculations that could lead to crisis or conflict, unquote. I think the United States couldn't have been more clear than this in stating what it wants to do with China. It is not ignoring China. It also understands the importance of keeping the engagement going, and the fact that China is taken into consideration about what the United States thinks in trying to maintain peace in the Indo-Pacific and the world at large. In fact, one assessment of Austin's speech, which was a highlight of day 2 of the dialogue, was the importance of partnerships in securing a shared vision for the Indo-Pacific. He reassured the allies and partners in the Indo-Pacific, which extends from the eastern shores of Africa to the Western Pacific, that the US remains committed to a shared vision of freedom, security, and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. And for that, he underscored the importance of partnerships in achieving future for the region, anchored in adherence to international norms. A free, open, and prosperous Indo-Pacific is in everybody's interest, is what the US has been constantly talking about. So interestingly, there was a counter question or a question by a Chinese military official, probably a senior colonel, who asked Austin that how do you reconcile with two tracks that the United States is adopting in the Indo-Pacific. On the one hand, it has this vision for open, free, and prosperous Indo-Pacific, and on the other, it talks about AUKUS, which is clearly a military alliance aimed at strengthening the defense capabilities of Australia by supplying Australia nuclear submarines. And Austin was at a loss for words, although he said that strengthening capabilities is also one way of maintaining peace, which probably did not convince the Chinese colonel. But that is how the discussion went on. And in fact, Austin's main theme in the address was that the aspiration of the countries, big and small, in the Indo-Pacific is a compelling vision, which is about building basic conditions that let people live their lives without fear and pursue dreams without limit, is what he underscored. And of course, he noted who are the main partners for the United States in the region. He spoke about Japan's pledge to invest $75 billion in public and private investment in regional infrastructure. Spoke about India's completion of maritime exercise with members of the ASEAN, which happened late last month. In fact, the Indian Naval Chief Admiral Hari Kumar was also present at the inauguration of the first India-ASEAN Navy's exercise in South China Sea, of all places, which was quite significant, which did not get the kind of attention it deserves, but which has been noted by the Secretary of Defense of the United States. Austin also actually hailed bold steps taken by Indonesia and Vietnam towards resolving their boundary dispute, and welcomed the rapprochement between Japan and South Korea. And they will help in creating peaceful conditions, is what he said. And therefore, I would think that the IISS dialogue, which takes place annually, as I said, in Singapore, is an important forum where people meet formally, of course, in these sessions. They express their views, they sort of almost do policy articulation, but also meet informally on the sidelines, and therefore have the opportunity to have open dialogue, or dialogue which is not under pressure of public glare or media glare, and therefore can be constructive in more ways than one can imagine. In fact, Austin told the audience that this was his 7th trip to the region as Secretary of Defense, and it gave him an opportunity to meet a range of officials, although he tried to meet the Chinese Defense Minister, which was refused by the Chinese side for a formal meeting. But at the opening ceremony, I saw Austin walking across to Li Shangfu, the Chinese Defense Minister, and shaking hands with him, which became a photo opportunity, of course. But beyond that, whether they met or they had a secret discussion one doesn't know, which is most unlikely in my view, given the fact that public stand taken by the Chinese that they will not allow a meeting between the two, it won't take place. But it's significant that the CIA chief, Bill Burns, was in China on a secret trip not too long ago, as reported by US media, which means there are attempts to continue to have the channel of communication, whether covert or overt, between China and the United States continues. Of course, one of the other points that Austin made in his speech, and which other leaders continue to draw the world's attention to, is Russia's invasion, which is indefensible, war of choice, and the bloodiest conflict in Europe after World War II, which the aggression shown by the Russians is not welcome, and people are worried about it. That dangers of disorder and the cost of chaos can be debilitating for the world is what everyone has talked about. In fact, Austin, of course, was not all reconciliatory. Some of his statements in that speech are quite blunt and aggressive in a way against China. So I quote from one of the important passages of his speech, and he says, and I quote, "The People's Republic of China continues to conduct an alarming number of risky intercepts of US and allied aircraft flying lawfully in the international space. And we have all just seen another troubling case of aggressive and unprofessional flying by the PRC." And finally, in the same breath, he mentions, and I quote again, "To be clear, we do not seek conflict or confrontation, but we will not flinch in the face of bullying or coercion." He said, conflict is not inevitable, and the US remains committed to strengthening peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait and South China Sea. Unquote. Finally, Austin said, status quo suits both sides and it must be maintained at all costs, and the United States will continue to strive for maintenance of status quo in the Taiwan Strait. Whether China will respond positively or take the advice from the United States remains to be seen. But clearly, the focus not only in the IISS Shangri-La dialogue in Singapore was on what would happen in Taiwan or what the Chinese would do against Taiwan in the time frame of 3 to 4 years from now, but also the inevitable fallout of the Ukraine war, which is now compelled even the European powers to look at Indo-Pacific more seriously and increase their presence in this area. India was mentioned in the passing, but we know that Austin from Singapore is coming to New Delhi and going to hold talks with all the senior leaders in the Indian government, which is a separate discussion which we have talked about, how the United States is wooing India to become a valued partner. And definitely India will not be an ally given history and given India's own emphasis on strategic autonomy that the United States is aware of, and therefore more and more cooperation in defense and critical technologies field between the United States and India is going to be inevitable. And as I said, Austin did mention India in the passing and praised India for what it's doing elsewhere, the emergence of the critical and emerging technologies part that he spoke about. But the final takeaway that I want to share with you from the Shangri-La dialogue is that the world is right now in a flux and nobody is sure how it is going to pan out in the coming years, if not months. So India has to be prepared for any fallout from either the European war or a likely confrontation or conflict in the Indo-Pacific, which at least the United States outwardly says it is trying its best to avoid. But we'll have to wait and watch what happens there. I thought I will not go beyond this preliminary observations from the dialogue. But that's something that I wanted to flag for you from Singapore, having got the benefit of participating in this important dialogue, which is not the first time that I'm doing it. But I thought, let me tell you about what exactly happens in these meetings and in this particular summit that takes place annually in June in Singapore. For the time being, that's all I have. Do keep watching Strat News Global. And of course, keep sending feedback. We will come back to you with more. For the time being, it's goodbye.